Hi, I'm George Levy for Bitsonline, and I'm at the North American Bitcoin Conference. And I'm right now with Josh Buirski, Asia Pacific Operations for Decred. It's a great pleasure to speak with you.
Likewise. Thank you.
I actually, it's very interesting because I swung by your booth at here at the event. Congratulations, you have a really nice presence.
Thank you very much.
I actually had the great opportunity to speak with you in previous occasions also, and you've done a lot of growth. One of the things that's fascinating about you as a cryptocurrency is that is your focus on governance. And right now, there's such a huge challenge. For instance, seeing all these forks that have been happening with other cryptocurrencies. And the question is, well, we saw it with Bitcoin Cash and what happened with Bitcoin SV. And the question was, is the concept of governance is so critical, and you have such focus on that. Could you tell us more about that?
Yep. So a lot of it's because so a lot of Decred's roots come from their early Bitcoin development. So a lot of the founding team members of Decred were very early Bitcoin developers and still to this day continue to develop for Bitcoin. So, back in the early years of Bitcoin, they developed what was at the time the first alternate full node implementation of Bitcoin. And I think, as with any open source project, particularly in the decentralized realm, inevitably you're sort of going to have contentious issues that arise, and then you've got to try and figure out a way to achieve, dispute resolution, right? So a lot of the early foresight came from the fact that the early Decred developers were experiencing these problems on a day-to-day basis, right? So it wasn't really a problem that they saw it and they thought, okay, this is a problem that might arise. They were experiencing it firsthand very, very early on, and they sort of had the foresight to realize, oh, this is going to be a serious problem in the future. Inevitably, fast forward 4 or 5 years, we saw that manifest itself and come to fruition in the form of, as you mentioned, Bitcoin Cash and all of these other contentious chain splits. And a lot of that comes from the fact that under a pure proof-of-work system, as is what Bitcoin currently uses, all of that protocol-level decision-making power is essentially under the hands of one stakeholder group, which is the proof-of-work miners, right? It's important to note that proof-of-work miners play an extremely important role in the system, but they're merely one group of stakeholders. So, their wishes and desires aren't necessarily always going to align with that of the broader network of stakeholders. So with Decred, we tried to add an additional layer of consensus that sort of takes a broader range of stakeholder opinions into account.
What's interesting about because it's fascinating where you're coming from. I always think of Bitcoin. I think of it as being decentralized, and but you positioned the miners as a stakeholder group, and you said that it's almost centralized because that group determines it. But then there's the larger community, right? Like, what about the users, right? They're not the miners, and they don't get to make decisions. Very interesting. One thing I will say, props. You're actually Asia Pacific in Decred, which is very. Coming from a corporate background myself, former Microsoft guy, we had an APAC region, but I've never seen that in the context of a decentralized crypto. It's incredible. So tell me more about that.
I mean, part of the beauty of Decred's model is that it's, beyond being a currency, it's really a new type of organizational structure, one that's incredibly transparent and has very low barrier to entry, right? So part of the beauty of the model is if there's some kind of value that you can add to the project and you're willing to do it, you can just get up and do it. And if the community want to see it happen, and they're fine with you doing it, you'll get reimbursed from it, right? And you get brought onto the fold as a contractor. So it must a little under 2 years ago, I was based in Australia. I grew up in Singapore, so sort of frequently around that region. And I saw that, a lot of Decred's presence was predominantly located in North America and Europe. And I was like, okay, clearly there's a gap here. And I think that there really could be an appetite for something like this in the Asia Pacific region. So I just sort of, I was at the time helping to co-organize Blockchain Melbourne, which was Australia's largest blockchain community at the time. In fact, it was the world's 5th largest community in general. Cool. And I just started running Decred meetups, trying to get people interested in it, trying to encourage developers to get involved. And then that kind of snowballed a little bit. And as I built trust amongst the community, they sort of felt a little bit more comfortable using the project's development funds to have me fly to places like Vietnam and Singapore and try and seed self-sustaining communities over there. So we've now sort of got a community slowly starting to sprout and grow in places like Ho Chi Minh City, Singapore, Jakarta, Indonesia, Melbourne, Sydney, all over the place. So it's sort of really exciting to see that happen.
I'm very glad to hear that. One thing I wanted to, for our audience, how can people find out more about Decred if they actually want to be involved, want to learn more about your governance model, all the things, all these questions?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on your learning style. Everything that you need to know is on the website. But personally, I find that a more conversational style is generally more effective to actually take in information. So with that being said, probably the best way, and the way that I learned personally, was jumping into the one of the many chat channels. So whether it be Slack, Discord, or Matrix chat, we actually have them all bridged. So if you send a message on one, it'll show up on the other. And that's where we have all of the discussion takes place virtually for the project. Hop in there, you'll see all the debates taking place. You'll see a lot of the project's operations get coordinated in there. It's a very, very transparent organization.
Well, that's excellent to hear. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you kindly.
I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something in the process. I bring you brand new videos every single week, so I invite you also to subscribe so we can stay in touch. Also, if you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them below. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, we are changing the world, one blockchain at a time. I'm George Levy. Thank you for watching.